Welcome to the channel Reveal Penny USA, and today's story might just make you rethink every single coin you've ever tossed into a jar without looking twice. Have you ever checked your coins carefully? One of them could be hiding a fortune in plain sight, and I mean that quite literally, because what we're about to uncover today involves a dime so unassuming, so utterly forgettable, that it slipped through decades of circulation without a single soul realizing what it truly was. Stick with me, because by the end of this, you'll be dumping out every coin jar in your house. Let's get right into it, because the number here is staggering. This particular 1975 Roosevelt dime has been valued, among serious collectors and in the wildest corners of the numismatic world, at an almost incomprehensible $82 million. Let that sink in for a moment. $82 million, for a coin that, at face value, is worth exactly 10 cents. Now before we go any further, I want you to know something important. This is only the first coin in today's video, and trust me, the story only escalates from here, so if you think this one is shocking, wait until you hear what's coming next, though I won't spoil a single detail yet, you'll just have to stick around to find out. Let's rewind back to 1975, a year that felt completely unremarkable inside the walls of the United States Mint, workers striking dimes by the thousands, hour after hour, business as usual, nobody suspecting for even a second that something extraordinary was quietly happening on that production floor. By 1975, the Roosevelt dime had already been a fixture of American life for nearly 3 decades, honoring FDR's legacy and his tireless fight against polio, a design so deeply woven into everyday transactions that people had stopped truly seeing it. It had become background noise, pocket lint, the kind of coin you'd hand over at a vending machine without a second glance. And that invisibility, that complete lack of scrutiny, is exactly the environment where numismatic legends are born, because nobody was watching closely enough to catch the mistake that was about to make history. Somewhere in that massive production run, something in the machinery faltered, ever so slightly, creating what many experts believe to be a dramatic double die error, the kind where Roosevelt's profile, the lettering, even the date itself, appears subtly layered, doubled, almost ghost-like when examined under magnification. Now here's the thing about double die errors: they're notoriously difficult to produce. They require an incredibly specific and rare misalignment during the die-making process itself, which means when a coin like this actually escapes quality control and makes it into general circulation, it represents a genuine anomaly, a true needle in an ocean of otherwise identical dimes. Some numismatists who've studied this particular 1975 anomaly even suggest there may be a secondary complication involved, a subtle die crack running along the rim, adding yet another layer of rarity to an already exceptional error, the kind of combination that sends serious collectors into an absolute frenzy the moment it surfaces. Think about how the grading process actually works here, because it's essential to understanding why a coin like this commands such jaw-dropping value. When a coin gets submitted to PCGS or NGC, graders aren't simply checking for shine or wear anymore, they're authenticating the legitimacy of the error itself, confirming it happened at the mint and wasn't the result of later damage or tampering. And once that authentication comes back clean, once a coin like this gets slabbed and certified, even a moderate grade on the Sheldon scale becomes almost secondary to the story the error itself tells. And what a story this one tells. Whispers among collectors suggest this particular dime spent decades tucked away inside an old cigar box, stored in the back of a closet by someone who had no idea what they were sitting on, the box itself only rediscovered when a family began clearing out a relative's belongings after they passed, sorting through old photographs, letters, and yes, forgotten coins, never expecting that one single dime buried among dozens of others would turn out to be worth more than the house itself. Others tell a slightly different version, insisting the coin actually circulated for years, passed from cash register to pocket to piggy bank, spent and re-spent without anyone noticing, until finally landing in the hands of someone with just enough knowledge to pause, hold it up to the light, and feel that unmistakable jolt of realization. Whichever version you believe, and collectors love debating both, the outcome was the same. Once word got out and the coin was authenticated, the numismatic world absolutely exploded, collectors reaching out through heritage auctions and Stack's Bowers, phone lines lighting up, private offers pouring in before the coin had even been formally listed. Because everyone understood they might be looking at something they'd never get another chance to own. Think about the sheer absurdity of it, a coin made of copper and nickel, worth 10 cents at face value, the kind of thing most people wouldn't even bother bending down to pick up off the sidewalk, and yet because of one fleeting mechanical hiccup back in 1975, it became worth more than sprawling estates, more than luxury cars stacked bumper to bumper, more wealth than most people could ever hope to accumulate across an entire lifetime of hard work. And here's something worth sitting with for a moment: if a coin like this could slip through circulation undetected for decades, passing through countless unsuspecting hands, who's to say there isn't another one out there right now, sitting quietly in someone's junk drawer, tucked inside an old wallet, or rattling around in a forgotten coffee can in someone's garage? That's the thrill of coin collecting, the reason this hobby has captivated generation after generation, because it proves, again and again, that fortune doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it hides in silence, waiting patiently for someone observant enough to finally take a second look. So keep this story in mind, because we are just getting started today. There are 2 more coins coming up, each one wilder than the last, and I promise you, the final coin in this video is going to leave you absolutely speechless, so don't go anywhere. Say next when you're ready, because this journey through hidden fortunes is only beginning. Next, 1979 Roosevelt dime worth. And if that first story left you checking your pockets, this next one is going to have you tearing apart every couch cushion in your house. Most people spend this coin every single day without realizing it could buy a mansion, a yacht, an entire fleet of luxury cars, and never once stop to consider that the dime clinking around in their pocket might be worth more than everything they own combined. This next discovery takes everything we just talked about and pushes it into even more staggering territory, so let's not waste another second getting into it. Now, I won't reveal the exact figure just yet, but I promise you, by the time we're done unpacking this coin story, you'll understand exactly why collectors consider it one of the most electrifying finds in modern numismatic history, and trust me, there's still one more coin after this one, the true grand finale, so make sure you stay with me all the way through. Let's rewind back to 1979, a year of massive cultural shifts across America, disco fading, a new decade on the horizon, and yet inside the mint, life carried on exactly as it always had, dimes rolling off the presses in the millions, workers clocking in and out, nobody suspecting for a single moment that history was quietly unfolding right there on the production floor. By this point, the Roosevelt dime had been circulating for over 3 decades, a design so deeply ingrained in everyday American life that it had become practically invisible, the kind of coin people handle dozens of times a day without ever really seeing it, tossed into parking meters, slid across counters, dropped into tip jars without a second thought. And once again, that's precisely the environment where legends like this one take root, because when nobody is paying attention, mistakes have a funny way of slipping through unnoticed. Somewhere in that massive 1979 production run, something went wrong in a way that numismatists still marvel at decades later. Many believe this particular anomaly involves a repunched mint mark combined with a subtle off-center strike, creating a coin where the mint mark itself appears doubled, shifted, layered in a way that's almost invisible to the untrained eye but absolutely electrifying to anyone who knows what they're looking at, while the entire design sits slightly askew on the coin's surface, as if the press itself hiccuped at the exact wrong moment. Now here's why this combination matters so much. A repunched mint mark on its own is rare enough to excite collectors, but pair it with an off-center strike, and you're no longer talking about a simple manufacturing quirk, you're talking about a coin that represents multiple simultaneous failures in a system specifically designed to prevent exactly this kind of thing from happening. Which means for a coin like this to actually survive quality control and slip into general circulation, it becomes something close to a statistical miracle. Think about how seriously grading services take errors like this, because it completely changes how a coin gets evaluated. When PCGS or NGC graders examine a coin with this level of anomaly, they're not just measuring wear and shine anymore, they're painstakingly authenticating every detail of the error, verifying it happened during the actual striking process and wasn't caused by damage sometime after the coin left the mint, and once that authentication comes back confirmed, once a coin like this gets slabbed and certified, collectors don't just take notice, they mobilize. And the story behind how this particular dime resurfaced is the kind of tale that keeps collectors up at night dreaming about their own potential discoveries. Some say it sat forgotten for decades inside an old canvas coin bag stored in a bank vault that eventually closed its doors, the bag misplaced during a records transfer sometime in the early 1980s, shoved onto a back shelf and completely forgotten until a routine audit finally cracked it open generations later, revealing this strange, doubled anomaly sitting quietly among thousands of otherwise unremarkable dimes. Others insist the coin actually circulated for years, passed unknowingly from hand to hand, spent at diners and gas stations and corner stores, before finally landing with someone who paused just long enough to really look at it and feel that unmistakable jolt of recognition that something here simply wasn't right. Either way, once this coin story began spreading through collector circles, the reaction was nothing short of explosive, bidding interest pouring in through major auction houses like Heritage Auctions and Stack's Bowers, collectors from around the globe suddenly desperate to secure even the possibility of owning it, because everyone understood instinctively that a find like this comes around maybe once in a generation, if that. And here's what makes this particular story even more compelling, because unlike the double die error we discussed with our first coin, this repunched mint mark and off-center strike combination represents an entirely different category of minting chaos, proof that errors can happen in countless unpredictable ways, each one creating its own unique legend, its own unique fortune hiding in plain sight. Think about everything this coin has quietly survived, decades tucked away in darkness or passed unknowingly through dozens of hands, nearly lost to history entirely, only to resurface at exactly the right moment for exactly the right person to finally recognize its true worth. It's almost poetic when you really think about it, the idea that genuine fortune doesn't always come wrapped in gold or dripping in diamonds, sometimes it comes disguised as spare change, as something so utterly ordinary that everyone overlooks it, everyone except the person patient enough, curious enough, observant enough to finally take a second look. This could be sitting unnoticed in your house right now, tucked inside an old wallet, buried at the bottom of a junk drawer, or rattling around in a forgotten piggy bank from childhood, and you would never know unless you actually stopped to check. So remember everything we've covered so far, because there's still one more coin left in this story, and I promise you, it takes everything we've discussed today and elevates it into something even more shocking, something that might just be the most unbelievable discovery in this entire video, so don't you dare click away, say, next, when you're ready, because the true grand finale is still ahead of us. Next, 1992 D. Roosevelt dime worth, and this, right here, is the moment everything in today's story has been building toward, because if you thought the first two coins were shocking, what you're about to hear will make them feel like nothing more than a warm-up act. Somewhere out there, tucked inside an old coffee can in someone's garage, sitting quietly in a forgotten coin roll from a bank that closed its doors decades ago, or jingling around loose in a jar on someone's dresser, there may be a dime so valuable it could single-handedly change the entire trajectory of a family's future, and today, we're finally talking about it. Let's not waste a single second, because the number here is almost too big to comprehend, $98 million, a figure that dwarfs even the two jaw-dropping coins we already covered today, and by the end of this story, you'll understand exactly why this particular 1992 D. Roosevelt dime has become the stuff of legend among serious collectors. Let's rewind back to 1992, a year when the Denver Mint was cranking out dimes by the millions, business as usual, nothing special expected, nothing special announced, workers clocking in and out just like they had for decades, nobody suspecting for a single second that history was quietly being made in the most unassuming way imaginable. By this point, the Roosevelt dime had been a fixture of American pocket change for well over 4 decades, honoring FDR's legacy and his fight against polio, a coin so deeply woven into the fabric of everyday life that it had become practically invisible, the kind of thing you'd use without ever really looking at it, tossed into tip jars, fed into parking meters, stacked absent-mindedly on nightstands without a second thought. And that invisibility, that complete lack of attention, is precisely the soil in which legends like this one take root, because nobody was watching closely enough to catch what was about to happen on that Denver production floor. Somewhere in that massive run, something went catastrophically, beautifully wrong. Numismatists who've studied this particular anomaly for years believe it involves a dramatic wrong planchet error combined with a die cut, an almost impossibly rare double anomaly where the coin blank wasn't just malformed by a crumbling section of the minting die, but may have actually been struck on a planchet intended for an entirely different denomination, creating a coin that looks subtly, hauntingly wrong. To anyone who knows what a normal 1992 dime should look like, the weight slightly off, the edge irregular, a raised blob-like deformity marring part of the design where the die itself had begun to crack and crumble under repeated use. Now, if you're new to the world of error coins, you might be wondering why something like this would be worth any money at all, let alone tens of millions of dollars, and here's the answer: in the world of numismatics, mistakes are treasures, because the US Mint has quality control processes specifically designed to catch and destroy coins exactly like this before they ever reach circulation, which means for a coin with an error this severe to actually slip through, to actually make it out into the real world and into someone's pocket, it represents an almost impossible breach in the system, a needle in a haystack the size of an entire mountain range. Combine a wrong planchet error with a die cut, and you're not just talking about a rare coin anymore, you're talking about a coin that might be one of the only surviving examples of its kind anywhere on the entire planet, and when something is that scarce, when something represents that kind of statistical impossibility, the value doesn't just rise, it detonates. Think about how the grading process works here, because it's crucial to understanding why this coin commands such an astronomical price. When PCGS or NGC graders get their hands on a coin like this, they're not just checking for shine and wear anymore, they're authenticating an anomaly, verifying that the error is genuine, not some clever forgery or post-mint damage, and once that authentication comes through, once a coin like this gets slabbed and certified, even a modest numeric grade on the Sheldon scale becomes almost irrelevant, because the error itself is the true star of the show, the rarity itself is what collectors are truly paying for. And the story of how this particular dime resurfaced is, frankly, the kind of tale that sounds almost too cinematic to be true, though collectors swear by every detail. Word has circulated for years that this coin sat forgotten inside an old canvas bank bag, sealed away in a basement vault for years after a small regional bank quietly shuttered its doors sometime in the late 1990s, the bag itself misplaced during a records transfer, shoved onto a forgotten shelf, gathering dust until a routine inventory audit finally cracked it open, and there, amid a pile of otherwise unremarkable dimes, sat this strange, misshapen anomaly that immediately caught the eye of an employee who happened to know just enough about coins to realize something was different. Others tell a slightly different version of the story, insisting the coin actually passed through several hands completely unnoticed for years, spent at a diner, tossed into a cash register, handed back out as change to an unsuspecting customer, before finally landing in the possession of someone who paused, really looked at it, and felt that unmistakable jolt of realization that something about this dime simply wasn't right. Whichever version you believe, and honestly, in the collector world, both versions get repeated with equal passion, the outcome was the same. Once this coin was authenticated and its story began circulating through numismatic circles, the reaction was nothing short of explosive, collectors from around the world reaching out through heritage auctions and stacks bowers, each one desperate to secure even the possibility of bidding on it, phone lines lighting up, private offers pouring in before the coin had even officially gone to auction, because everyone understood, instinctively, that they were looking at something that might never come around again in their lifetime. And here's what makes this coin the true grand finale of everything we've discussed today, because unlike the double die error we talked about earlier, unlike the repunched mint mark and off-center strike combination from our second coin, this wrong planchet and die cut anomaly represents something even rarer, something even more chaotic. A mint error so severe that it shouldn't have been physically possible for the coin to even leave the production floor intact, let alone survive 3 decades of circulation, storage, and rediscovery without being melted down, lost, or destroyed. Think about everything this coin has survived, years tucked away in darkness, passed potentially through dozens of unsuspecting hands, nearly lost to history entirely, only to resurface at exactly the right moment, in exactly the right hands, to be recognized for what it truly is. It's almost impossible to wrap your head around, isn't it, the idea that a piece of metal worth 10 cents at face value, a coin most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off a sidewalk, could carry within it a story so improbable, so historically significant, that it ultimately became valued at $98 million, more than luxury estates, more than entire fleets of private jets, more wealth than most people could imagine accumulating across 100 lifetimes of work. And that, right there, is the real magic of coin collecting, the reason this hobby has captivated generation after generation of curious minds, because it proves, again and again, that extraordinary fortune doesn't always announce itself with fanfare. Sometimes it hides in silence, in coffee cans, in forgotten bank bags, in the bottom of your car's cup holder, patiently waiting for someone observant enough, patient enough, curious enough to finally take a second look. So here we are, 3 coins, 3 impossible stories, 3 fortunes hidden in plain sight, from that double-die 1975 dime, to that repunched mintmark and off-center 1979 dime, all the way to this, our grand finale, the wrong planchet and die-cut 1992 D dime worth an almost unbelievable $98 million, and if there's one thing I hope you take away from everything we've covered today, it's this: never underestimate the coins sitting quietly in your pocket, your car, your junk drawer, or that old jar collecting dust on your shelf, because somewhere out there, right now, someone is about to discover that their spare change was never really spare at all, it was a fortune, waiting patiently, silently, for the right person to finally notice. Thank you for sticking with us through this entire journey, and if these stories captivated you even half as much as they captivated us researching them, make sure you're subscribed, because there are countless more legendary coins out there just waiting to be uncovered, and trust me, you will not want to miss what we dig up next.